G'day ladies and gentle tubers. So we have lots of baby chickens. We got these guys here about 3 weeks ago, and after a failed attempt of introducing them to a broody hen, I opted for building a bunch of brooding cages, which now adorn my wife's office. The big cage on the bottom for the 3-week-old chicks, and a smaller cage on the top for the 3-day-old chicks. You can see how these were made by clicking the link in the top right hand of the screen. After all this messing around, the 3-week-old chicks are now way too big. Not for the cage, but for the wife's office. So with the price of lumber at the moment, I opted for a cheap, made in China chicken coop off Amazon. From the onset, all looked pretty good. It's nicely packaged in a good sized box that's easy to handle, fairly clear instructions, and the only tools you need are a 10mm spanner or open-ended wrench and a Phillips head screwdriver or an impact driver. Be careful with the packaging, as most of us know chickens' favourite food is styrofoam, and they will eat the whole lot if given the opportunity. Then the next time it rains, all the chicken poo will float down to the low points in your property. Before attempting the construction, I quickly lay all of the parts out where I think they need to go. This helps me familiarise myself with the parts and assess how I'm going to construct it. It's key here to also ensure that the finished structure is going to fit through your coop door. If it won't fit through the coop door, then you're best to construct this coop inside your existing enclosure. It's at this point I start to see why the chicken coop was so cheap. It's made from cedar, which is good weather resistant type timbers, but it does only have a very, very thin coat of paint. And while the timbers are both stapled and glued, it looks as though they were glued while the paint was still wet. So structurally, the whole thing's not overly sound. I did combat this, however, by re-gluing and restapling some of the parts that fell apart as they came out of the box. I did this all off camera, so I apologise if you really needed to see that. Also keep in mind that due to the light construction of these parts, this coop is totally inadequate for a standalone coop. Any wild animal with the desire for baby chicken would be able to tear through this thing in a minute flat. So it's really only going to be any good as a day coop, or like in my situation, inside a pre-existing enclosure that is very much more animal proof. The wire cage end in total probably only weighs about 6 to 8 pounds, and it simply butts up against the chicken house, so even a stiff breeze could make this come to pieces. Also for size, this coop would be a real squeeze for 2 full-grown chickens. If you want your chickens to have any type of quality of life, you would need a much larger enclosure. So, leftover pieces. Number 1, there's a little ramp that's much too small for any chicken, even chicks, so it's kind of a bit of a waste. And there were 2 long lengths of timber left over that were not in the instruction book that I assume are purchased. So I put them where I thought they would go, one in the chicken house and one in the caged enclosure. finally I measured up and leveled out a small area for the coop within my chicken enclosure, and placed it where it needed to go. Hopefully this will allow my baby chickens to get acclimatized to the older chickens before they are let out with the rest of the flock. So I suggest, if you're looking for something like this, don't be afraid to spend a little bit more than this $200 coop to get something a little more structurally sound. It will be well worth the investment. After timber prices go down, I will probably build a standalone unit from scratch to replace this for next year's broody hens. Please check out the links at the end here for more chicken content. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.